Ever feel like no matter how hard you try, what you study just won't stick? It's frustrating, right? You read the same thing over and over, but when the time comes to recall it, your mind goes blank. The good news is that memory isn't just a talent, it's a skill. And like any skill, it can be trained. In this video, we'll explore some of the best, lesser-known memory techniques that can make learning easier and more effective. Number 1, the Zeigarnik effect. Ever notice how cliffhangers in TV shows make you desperate to know what happens next? That's the Zeigarnik effect, the brain's tendency to remember incomplete tasks better than completed ones. You can use this to your advantage while studying. Instead of finishing a study session neatly, stop in the middle of an idea. Your brain will keep processing it in the background, improving retention. For example, if you're reading a textbook, don't end at the conclusion of a chapter. Instead, stop mid-paragraph or at a crucial moment in the explanation. Your subconscious will work on making sense of it, and when you return, the information will feel more familiar. This technique keeps your mind engaged even when you're not actively studying. Number 2, chunking. Chunking is a study method that involves breaking down large amounts of information into smaller, more manageable units, or chunks. This technique leverages the brain's natural ability to recognize patterns and relationships, making it easier to retain and recall information. For example, instead of trying to memorize a long string of numbers, you can group them into smaller sections, like how phone numbers are structured. The same principle applies to studying. By organizing complex material into meaningful categories or themes, you reduce cognitive overload and enhance comprehension. To use chunking effectively, start by identifying the main ideas within the material and grouping related concepts together. This can be done using outlines, mind maps, or mnemonic devices to reinforce connections between chunks. For example, if studying history, break it into time periods, significant events, and key figures rather than memorizing everything in sequence. Reviewing each chunk separately before integrating them into a broader understanding helps strengthen retention. Over time, this approach enables you to absorb large volumes of information more efficiently and recall details with greater ease. Number 3, the handwriting reinforcement method. Typing notes might be fast, but handwriting activates different neural pathways in the brain, leading to stronger memory retention. However, there's a twist. Write your notes in an unfamiliar style. This could mean writing in cursive if you usually print, using a different color for key points, or even writing with your non-dominant hand. This slight difficulty forces your brain to pay more attention, making the information stick better. Why does this work? The extra effort needed to process the unfamiliar handwriting slows you down and makes you more mindful of the content. Instead of passively copying, your brain actively engages with the material. Over time, this small adjustment can significantly boost your ability to recall information. Number 4, the Feynman reversal. You've probably heard of the Feynman technique, where you explain a concept in simple terms as if teaching it to a child, but here's the twist: try explaining it incorrectly on purpose and then correcting yourself. This forces your brain to recognize the flaws in understanding and strengthens the correct information. For example, if you're learning about gravity, start by saying, "Gravity pushes objects away from Earth." Then immediately correct yourself, "Wait, no, gravity pulls objects toward Earth because of mass." That moment of self-correction creates a strong memory trace, making it harder to forget. This method works because the act of catching mistakes enhances long-term retention. Number 5, sensory layering. Most people rely on just one sense, vision, when studying. But the more senses you involve, the stronger the memory. This technique, called sensory layering, helps you absorb information by associating it with multiple sensory inputs. For instance, if you're learning vocabulary, try writing the words while listening to instrumental music and chewing mint gum. Later, when you chew mint gum again, the memory of those words will resurface more easily. The key is consistency. Associate a particular texture, scent, or sound with specific types of information, and you'll find recall becomes effortless. Number 6, the location trick. This one is great for people who struggle to memorize long lists or sequences. Instead of trying to remember information in isolation, assign each piece of knowledge to a specific place you're familiar with. This is different from the classic memory palace because you're using real-world locations that you visit often. For example, if you need to remember 5 key principles of physics, assign each one to a different part of your home. Newton's first law in the kitchen, second law in the bedroom, and so on. When it's time to recall, mentally walk through your house and the information will pop up as if it's physically stored there. This method works exceptionally well because our brains are naturally good at remembering places. Number 7, the sleeping brain hack. Your brain consolidates memories during sleep, but did you know you can enhance this process? If you play a soft audio recording of what you studied right before bed, your brain will process and reinforce that information during deep sleep. This works best with definitions, language learning, or historical facts. The trick is to keep the volume just low enough that you're barely aware of it, too loud, and it will disrupt sleep. By doing this, you take advantage of your brain's ability to organize and strengthen memories overnight, giving you better recall the next day. Number 8, the Retrieval challenge. Most people reread notes or textbooks, but passive review isn't the best way to learn. A better method is to close the book and actively try to recall the information before checking if you got it right. This forces your brain to work harder, strengthening the neural pathways needed for long-term retention. One way to do this is by writing down everything you remember about a topic before reviewing your notes. Another approach is using blurred notes, where key terms are hidden and you have to recall them. The mental struggle of pulling information from memory actually strengthens it, making it easier to retrieve later. Number 9, the blurting method. The blurting study method is a simple but effective way to improve memory and understanding. Instead of passively reading or highlighting notes, you close your book and write down everything you remember, like blurting out information onto the page. This forces your brain to actively recall what you've learned, which strengthens memory and helps identify gaps in your knowledge. Once you've written everything you can, you check your notes or textbook to see what you missed and fill in the blanks. This method works because active recall is one of the best ways to retain information. By repeatedly testing yourself without looking at the material, you train your brain to retrieve information more easily. It's especially useful for subjects that require memorization, like history, biology, or languages. Plus, the more you practice, the more you'll remember during actual exams. Instead of just recognizing the material, you'll truly know it. Memory isn't just about repetition, it's about using your brain's natural strengths to your advantage. By applying these techniques, you'll find that studying becomes less frustrating and more effective. Try them out and see what works best for you. And if you found these types helpful, let me know in the comments, which technique are you most excited to try?